This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reif Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
We played simple. We played the game fast. We didn't spend much time in our zone. And then we got the next one. That was the big thing. It's a one-goal game, and it's either going to be 3-3 or 4-2. And I thought we pushed to deserve to get that goal, and then to close it out well without giving up one was I liked all around game.
Hey, Coach Coop, we liked that game too.
Yes.
You know who else liked that game? Nikita Kucherov.
Yes.
We can get into some of those numbers that exploding. Did Steve send us? I think he tweeted our little group chat.
Yeah, there's so many crazy Kucherov stats. It's hard to process them all because the Lightning produce some, the NHL will produce some. I can go to the list and read them. The number of consecutive road games of 3 or more points. So he's had 3 or more points in 3 straight road games, which puts him into elite category in terms of multiple times. He's done it 3 times. Number of 5-point games. There's one that Steve sent us about his stretch, which we've talked about this year, how hot he has been. And they're all comparing Kucherov to Gretzky, Lemieux, a few other guys. It's very rare, right? Yager, Peter Stastny, I think, because some of them are born outside of North America like Kucherov. So he's in that category too.
You almost have to not put what Gretzky did in these moments, because Gretzky's just in a class of his own. That's why, anytime somebody breaks a Gretzky record or challenges anything with Gretzky, you just are like, wow, that is pretty impressive. You almost have to do it. Okay, everybody else outside of Wayne Gretzky, Nikita Kucherov has, you're talking about rarefied air. And we don't have to go down this rabbit hole today, but I'm curious because we both have seen great players. I've told you before, you've called games. I think Mario Lemieux is the greatest player to ever play the game. Kucherov, is he poking at that group a little bit? Is it too soon? Maybe, but I feel like what he's doing, at least in Lightning history, more than anything we've seen from Stamkos. Vinny's, and the Martys, right?
It's hard to compare any player to Gretzky or Lemieux, for that matter, until their career is done.
Correct.
But what we can do is say, look, Kucherov has done this, and the number of players that have done this is limited to a handful, and usually there's Gretzky, Lemieux, and then a few others. Here's one that was in the morning skate report that is interesting, which kind of goes to the stat that Steve gave us, which I will read right now. So Steve sent us a stat. Nikita Kucherov has 93 points over his last 45 games. That's the most points by any NHL player over a 45 game span since Mario Lemieux in 95-96. Lemieux did it in 45 games. He had 112
No, that's
points.
Even better. That's hilarious.
So that is, 19 more points than Kucherov. But check out this, Greg. So this is from the NHL's morning skate. Nikita Kucherov can become the 4th player to overcome a 22-point deficit to win the Art Ross Trophy. Forsberg, Lemieux, and Bobby Hull did it.
I was going to say, I remember Lemieux when I think he was coming back from cancer, and he tracked down Turgeon, right?
Yeah, this is 87-88 for Lemieux, according to this. So that would have been pre-cancer.
Gotcha.
But Forsberg did it in 02-03, which is,
interesting.
He wasn't right at the end of his career, but I shouldn't say he was on the back nine. He was still in Colorado at that point. He was 32 points off the Art Ross lead and came back to win it. So that speaks to how hot Kucherov has been. But yes, he had another huge night last night. He had 5 points. So there's a lot to cover, and nearly all of it is positive for the Lightning, which is a nice change from what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. So beyond what they did offensively, but it's kind of all tied together, they had their best period since the break in the first period, and right up there with that was their third period. I think the first period and the third period last night were their 2 best periods. They dominated Seattle. They've had other good periods. I mean, they scored 4 goals in the first period against Toronto in their road win at Toronto. But, they held the Kraken to 8 shot attempts in the first period. And then in the third period, which was a 3-2 game Lightning going into the third, the Kraken only managed 10 shot attempts. I mean, 18 shot attempts in a period is average. Like in one period, I would say that's average low. The Lightning held the Kraken to 18 shot attempts over 40 minutes. How do you do that? Well, there are a few ways to do it. Number one, you have the puck a lot, which they did. Number two, when the other team has the puck, you are closing them off almost immediately. The Lightning's neutral zone was outstanding in the first and the third especially. And a lot of it had to do, we talk about the D gaps, right? Like the defensemen were disrupting plays in the neutral zone, but it was also the forwards coming back hard through the neutral zone, getting on a Kraken player and kind of disrupting a play. So you might see a Kraken player with the puck. The forechecker, or the back checker, I should say, the forward is coming back and kind of disrupting the play, and the puck would just slide to a Lightning defenseman, and they would counter. The Lightning's forecheck gave Seattle fits. I mean, it led directly to a handful of goals. 3 of the first 4 were directly off of turnovers the Lightning forced in the offensive zone.
Sure.
So they didn't really let Seattle generate much of anything, in particular in the first and the third. So it wasn't just that they did a lot of good things with the puck. They did a lot of good things without the puck. So they didn't have to spend a lot of time without the puck. And we just haven't seen that from the Lightning with any level of consistency since the break ended. What Coop talked about, I know Eric said this on the broadcast too, and he's right. They really played on their toes. They played aggressively. They played hungry, and it paid huge dividends. Now, you can't be over exuberant. Sometimes you can be too hungry, right, and pull yourself out of position. We didn't really see that last night. So, I mean, there was one odd man for Seattle, which came at a very delicate point in the game, but that wasn't due to over-exuberance by the Lightning. They just scored the second goal off the face-off. The Lightning won the draw, and I think it was Destu got stripped by Winterton. He got a breakaway. Vasilevsky made the save. That was the one, to the best of my memory, the one odd man rush Seattle got, and it was off a little bit of a broken play where their guy got in on Destu, and it was Destu and McDonough. One of them lost the puck. Winterton got a breakaway. So that was it. That was an outstanding performance team-wide. That's not just one line, 2 lines, 1 defense pair. Everybody was doing it. Over the boards, solid play your shift, a lot of possession, to the bench, next line up, and they just kept it rolling. We'll get to the second period and what happened in the second period, but as much as I talked about the Gord line against Carolina, I'm like, the Gord line was the one line for the Lightning that did a lot of good things. The Gord line was fine last night, but the line that did a lot for the Lightning was Hagel, Cirelli, and Kucherov. But I also felt Point, Guentzel, and Goncalves had a terrific game. So when your top 6 are dealing, they were playing with pace,
right?
Execution. It was like tape-to-tape passes. We've missed that, right? Like they just haven't played with pace in their game. And it's hard to play with pace in your game if you're not completing passes cleanly. They were like boom, 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 up the ice. And the passes were quick, and Seattle was having trouble kind of containing what the Lightning were throwing at them. So, I thought that, honestly, the best offensive players for the Lightning had an outstanding game. And Kucherov has had some big games even since the break I just mentioned. It's his 3rd straight road game of 3 or more points. If you factor in the Toronto win, the Buffalo game where they lost 8-7, and then this one. But for Hagel and Cirelli, I thought by far it was their best game since the break. And if you remember on yesterday's show, I just mentioned this briefly talking about the Lightning's penalty kill. I'm like, we really haven't seen Hagel and Cirelli put the power play team on their heels. It's like we saw them again last night. I thought they were fantastic as a line with Kucherov, and I thought Hagel and Cirelli were fantastic killing penalties. Lightning had to kill 3. They gave up a goal 4 seconds after one of them ended, but Hagel and Cirelli weren't on the ice for that one. They did so much good work, and they look like the duo that we've seen for much of the year. Like, they get the puck, they're pressing the attack. There was one kill where the Lightning had the puck a lot in the offensive zone, and it started with Hagel and Cirelli doing some good things as far as, like, getting pucks up and then, putting the Kraken a little bit back on their heels. So that's how I saw the game. The Lightning had a problem in the second period. I mean, I'll get to that in a second, but I at least wanted to pass it back to you and say, like, this was a great performance by the Lightning in just about every aspect. They played very, very well as a team, but when you've got your top guys dealing the way that they were dealing, they are a very, very difficult team to contend with, and Seattle felt the brunt of that last night.
Doesn't Goncalves give that top 6 a different dynamic when he's playing?
When he's playing the way he's playing, yeah.
The way he's playing, and I think that's remember the question I asked you: is he a legitimate top 6, or is he somebody who can play with skilled players? I think there is a difference, but that was impactful. The first period was great. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here with my analysis. The star players led the way. Yanni Gord has a big fight in his return.
Early third.
And kudos to him. I thought Vasi was sharp when needed to be. The second period, you're right, there was pushback from Seattle, and it proves our point. We've talked about this before. Hard to have a full 60-minute game, but there was a lot to take from that game in a positive way that hopefully they can use tomorrow night. So Kucherov continues to amaze. It's nights like the one he had last night where he goes back into the news and elevates his campaign potentially to be MVP for the league. When you have a 5-point night, people take notice. A hat trick, people take notice. And I think the fact of how far he's come in this race to catch McDavid, I mean, for so long it was McDavid and McKinnon, and I don't know if many people anticipated Kucherov would be knocking on the door. Well, he's knocking on the door and he's asking to come on in and have fun, and that's the part that's exciting for me. So
McDavid is gonna. I mean, it's not like McDavid is incapable of getting points without Draisaitl, but he is going to be without Draisaitl for the rest of the regular season. They announced the Oilers.
Kucherov's also a different player, where you don't think of McDavid as a playmaker per se. You think of him as a great player.
He likes having Draisaitl with him, though, on the power play. I mean,
sure.
McDavid gets points on the power play, and Draisaitl scores some of those goals, right?
Correct.
So,
but
also,
like
as it relates to the Lightning, they are not going to be seeing Draisaitl, obviously, when they play the Oilers on Saturday.
That's a big deal.
That
Let's not minimize that. That is a big deal, for sure. But anyways, Kucherov, again, you look at the score sheet, and he's got 3, 4, 5 points, and that jives with what we've seen from him throughout his career, where he just has a way of getting points. I don't know if it's a Russian thing. I don't know if it's a just an elite skill thing, but he's pretty incredible.
Well, he started quickly. So in some ways, of his 5 points, the one in which he maybe had the most impact, he had an impact on all 5. But the one in which he had the most impact was the first point, which was a goal, because he got in on Ben Myers and stole the puck.
Correct.
That was right after. So this was a little bit of a key point in the first period. The Lightning were dominating. They got the goal from Goncalves. They got back-to-back power plays that overlapped by 7 seconds. They had a lot of zone time, especially in the first one. Couldn't score. Then late on the second power play, Perry gets called for a high stick. So Seattle has an opening here. If Seattle scores on that power play, you're coming out of that first period like, we dominated this period. How are we not up? Lightning killed the penalty. Again, Hagel and Cirelli were part of that. The penalty ends. Hagel and Cirelli come back on the ice for a 5-on-5 shift with Kucherov. Kucherov makes a play on Myers to force a steal. It was actually Hagel got in on Ryan Lindgren, which forced maybe a tough pass to Myers. He has a kind of caught in his skates, and Kucherov steals it. Sets up a 2-on-1 down low. Kucherov to Hagel, back to Kucherov. He has an open net. That's his first point. That was his first goal of the hat trick that he had. Huge goal, because it really allowed the Lightning to be rewarded with a multi-goal lead after they had played so well in the first period. But you look at the other points that he had, like the 3-0 goal, which was another Kucherov goal. I mean, Hagel to Cirelli, Cirelli to Kucherov, like he has an open net. I mean, he taps it in. He got the benefit of the goal, but he did less work on that than he did on the Myers goal. The third point that he had was a very key goal. That was the one that Coop was talking about. Cirelli scored it early in the third to make it 4-2. Another forechecking steal for Hagel.
Right.
He stole the puck from a Seattle defender, threw it in front and kind of hit Kucherov, and then went to the side, not the side of the net, but like more to the other side of the net, still in front of the net, and Cirelli was able to slam it in. So what did Kucherov? He went to the front of the net, but it kind of bounced off of him. He had a beautiful pass to Goncalves on the power play goal. He enters the offensive zone, but he had the secondary assist on that one. That was the Hagel goal, and then, of course, he scored the empty netter. So, look, he earned his 5 points, but it was one of those games where, like, sometimes Kucherov has to do a lot of heavy lifting to set up a goal, and often he's having an assist.
Yeah.
Last night, he was the beneficiary, interestingly, of the work that some of his line mates did. Specifically Hagel, who forced some steals and disrupted some plays, and they ended up, scoring a goal where Kucherov ended up getting a point. Anyway, the second period, let's at least touch on that, and then, we can get to questions and maybe, look at Vancouver or, check out the picture as far as the Eastern Conference playoff race is concerned. So there are a couple of cardinal sins that you want to avoid. One of those is giving up a goal on the shift after a goal, whether you scored a goal or the other team scored a goal. One of the problems the Lightning have had since the Olympic break is giving up goals in bunches. Last night they didn't really give up goals in bunches, but they did allow a goal right after they scored. So 3-0. Kucherov scores in the opening minute of the second. I think if the Lightning keep that 3-0 lead or maybe add a fourth goal, I think it's lights out. I think you got a snooze fest the rest of the game. Instead, Seattle has an answer. Matty Beniers makes a good play there. Like, he jumps in the air to intercept the Radish clearing attempt, which was a flip. But that puck has to get out there. It absolutely, you cannot make that mistake. And Beniers makes a really good play because he's sliding to the ice, but he's still with his stick because he gloved it down. So he had to make a play with his stick, which I don't think it would have reached Bobby McMahon, just him gloving it down. But he got it to McMahon. McMahon made a really nice shot. I mean, give him credit. He went almost under the bar, right? But it was the turnover. It was a very avoidable turnover, and it turned into a costly turnover because it gave Seattle some life. I don't think the Kraken overwhelmed the Lightning, but now it's 3-1. The Lightning weren't quite as dominant for the next few minutes, and then they take a penalty. The Lightning did a very nice job during that penalty kill. They got through the kill, but as it's winding down, the Kraken have one final entry. It's Jared McCann. So they have Jared McCann and Bobby McMahon. Both scored last night. This is McCann, the guy that you were talking about on the show yesterday. He and Eberle get the puck into the offensive zone. They have a little pass back and forth, and the Lightning got mixed up. So I think it was Radish who was in the box. They also had Hedman and Chernak on the ice. So when Radish comes out of the box, you get 3 defensemen. Radish is trying to get back in the play. I'm not sure if he really got back into the play, so it was still kind of a 5-on-4 because the goal came 4 seconds after the penalty ended. McCann walks out of the corner. Hedman is on the wrong side of him because he had stepped up to try and intercept the pass from Eberle to McCann, which got past him. Chernak is in front of the net. Chernak, I think, is worried about Beniers behind him. That if he goes to McCann, that opens a seam pass to Beniers. So I don't know if he thought, like, I'm going to let the goalie take the shooter. But, again, I'm not saying whose responsibility it was. That's the coaching staff's job to be like, this was your guy. But the bottom line is you cannot allow a player as skilled as McCann to just walk. He waltzed out of the corner, went right to the front of the net, and chipped it in. It was a huge mistake. Now it's 3-2. It's like, how did this game become 3-2? It could have been 5-6-0. Then, off the faceoff, Winterton gets the breakaway. Vasi makes the save to keep it 3-2, but the Lightning take a penalty. Destu hooked him. So now you got to get through a kill. Lightning did a very good job on the kill, and I'm not sure Seattle was super dangerous the rest of the period, but you had a much different feel at 3-2. So it wasn't like the Lightning had a second period littered with mistakes, but they made a couple of big mistakes that cost them, and they had to find a way to push back in the third, which they did. Even before Cirelli scored to make it 4-2, you could tell like they were back playing the way that they played in the first period. And, Seattle was pretty quiet. Kakko had one chance off the rush that hit like the top of the crossbar where the post and crossbar would meet. But I don't think Seattle had much going in the third period, which is a credit to the Lightning. I think the fourth goal also took a little wind out of their sails. They didn't have it last night. They didn't. I mean, some of that was the Lightning. I'd like to believe Seattle in the second wild card spot coming in. I think they're still in the second wild card spot, which I can check. Like, they did not have their best showing. It happens. I mean, the Lightning have had plenty of games where they have not had a great showing recently. Seattle was coming off back-to-back wins over the weekend in a back-to-back, but consistency has been a problem for this team. They have 71 points through 67 games, so that's a little over Hockey 500, and they are in second wild card spot, but they're tied with the Kings in points. They own the tiebreaker. And San Jose is only 1 point back, and Nashville's only 2 points back. So, it's going to be a dogfight for the Kraken. I'm sure they weren't very happy with their performance last night. But, again, the Lightning had something to do with that. When the Lightning run into a team that takes them out of their game, we credit the other team. Last night, the Lightning dictated the terms of that game for much of it. And a game that got closer maybe than it should have, based on how the Lightning were dominating, they didn't let the Kraken get back to a tie game situation, and they reestablished control in the third, and they were deserving of the 2 points. And I feel 2 more points closer now to whatever that line is that you want to make. Steve and I were kind of talking about 100 points. Lightning are now at 86. I think that the second wild card team will get in with under 100 points, but the race is still tight, but the Lightning still have the points percentage advantage. They still have the games in hand, and they don't even need to come close to winning out to get into the playoffs. They just need to string together some good games, I think. As far as the playoffs are concerned, they need to get some more points. They have time to get those points. As far as what happens in the playoffs, we need to see more games like we saw last night once they get into the playoffs, which is hard to do. It's hard to dictate a game as much as they did last night in a playoff game, but that's the sort of hockey that the Lightning are going to need to play once they get into a playoff series.
Talent usually wins out if you're working hard, and I thought that was a game, too, where the talent was different. Seattle doesn't have a Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov and players like that, and I thought that was pretty noticeable. And by the way, an important win because it felt like everybody who the Lightning are competing with ended up winning last night. I mean, that's just kind of where we are with this.
But they made up some games in hand. Like they made up a game in hand on Detroit, so they gained 2 points on Detroit. Ottawa didn't play last night, so they gained 2 points on Ottawa. Boston and Montreal did play, and I was talking about, you don't want this game to go into overtime. It did. Montreal won, so Montreal got 2, Boston got 1. But I will just point out, like, when these head-to-head games do go into overtime, it is less ideal than if a game ends in regulation. If you have 2 teams that are around the Lightning and they're playing each other, you would like one team to get 0 points. But if it goes into overtime, that does help the Lightning as far as the tiebreak is concerned. So at this point, it would take an extraordinary turn of events for the Montreal Canadiens to win a tiebreak from the Lightning. They are just so far back in regulation wins. The Lightning have 32 regulation wins. Montreal is 25. That's a gap of 7 regulation wins. And the Canadiens are 2 points back. So, basically, for them to finish, if they were to finish tied, the only way the Lightning could lose that tiebreak is like every remaining win for the Lightning is not in regulation, and just about every remaining win for Montreal is, basically. So if it comes down to it, you would like to be in a position where the team that is chasing you has to overtake you. And right now, for most teams around the Lightning, Buffalo being an exception, Buffalo's ahead of the Lightning. Most teams around the Lightning are not in a position to pass them in that first tiebreaker. So I would have preferred to see that game between the Canadiens and Bruins end in regulation. Sure. It didn't. Meant the Lightning got 1 point on the Bruins because they were the losers in overtime. But the Lightning gained a regulation win on both those teams last night because the game did go into overtime.
That is something to keep an eye on when we talk about these teams who are close. Can the Lightning, with the games in hand, take advantage of that and continue to maintain a decent pace here? Mm-hmm. We'll continue to monitor that. Obviously, it's going to be a big talking point at Bolts Radio if you want to get involved in the conversation. 3-Pack says 12 points between Kuch, Hagel, and Cirelli. Let's go. Yep, that is a heck of a line when they are clicking.
Yeah. And I think it was really that Hagel and Cirelli, and I know this is kind of a silly way of putting it. Maybe it's not silly. They look like Hagel and Cirelli last night. They look like the players that got named the Canadian Olympic team. The reason why they were named the Canadian Olympic team. If they just had like a vanilla season in the first half, maybe they wouldn't have been named the Canadian Olympic team. Cirelli couldn't go because of injury, but if he'd been healthy, he would have gone. They look like the players that we saw for much of the, first half to 2/3 of the season last night.
Sometimes it takes a little bit to get going after that break. Yeah. Mytho says, how is he not the favorite for the Hart?
Oh, he's just getting you riled up. Mythos is getting Greg riled up.
Look, there's other great players who are being involved in this race. McDavid and McKinnon, those guys. Celebrini should be part of that conversation. My issue was always, I just didn't think Kucherov was a big enough part of that conversation. So he may win it, he may not. I mean, I think where I sit, you can make the same argument you make for Celebrini, you can make it for Kucherov, even though the teams are in different spots and the expectations are different. Like, the second leading scorer is pretty far behind Nikita Kucherov. The Lightning had faced adversity all season long with significant injuries. And a lot of people felt like maybe the window was starting to close on this team really being a contending team. Kucherov addressed all three of those emphatically. Like, hey, there is a wide gap between me and Jake Guentzel. Jake Guentzel's still having a pretty good year. We had a lot of injuries. I stepped up, competed pretty hard. And, oh, by the way, I've kept this window open even when some people felt like coming into the year, maybe the Lightning, were a playoff team, but not a cup team. Mm-hmm. So I think those all are fair points to bring up.
I'm going to make an argument for McDavid for a second.
Please
just
do.
Because I hadn't realized Edmonton is in second place in the Pacific Division. This Pacific Division, though, is actually they're tied for first, but they're in second because Anaheim has 2 extra games. This Pacific Division is very mediocre. So the 3 teams that are atop the Pacific, Anaheim, Edmonton, and Vegas, 77 points, 77 points, 76 points. That by far is the worst of any of the division leaders. That is less important than where they are in relation to the 9th place team. The Los Angeles Kings, I just mentioned, have 71 points. They are only 5 points back of Vegas and only 6 points back of Anaheim and Edmonton. The first place teams, Anaheim and Edmonton, tied for first, are only 6 points up on a team outside the playoffs. So let's say Edmonton has to scratch to get into the playoffs. I don't know if that's going to happen. But if Edmonton ekes into the playoffs, how would they have gotten into the playoffs? Offense.
Right.
Who's their best offensive player? McDavid. If you had pulled McDavid, if the Oilers are not going to have a year where they are going to be comfortably in the playoffs, and you pulled McDavid off that team, maybe they missed the playoffs. I understand Draisaitl was there too until now, but McDavid is leading the league in scoring. And I believe Edmonton is second only to Colorado in goals scored this year. So it's the same old with Edmonton, right? They can't stop the puck. Yeah, the puck does not stay out of their net. But I mean, again, that is kind of combining maybe the best player, most talented player, the player with the most points, with also incredible value to his team. Like the McKinnon argument doesn't ring as true because, the Avalanche are going to finish, in all likelihood, first overall in the league. So if you pulled McKinnon off their team, maybe they would have, won fewer games and had fewer points, but they wouldn't have missed the playoffs, I don't think. I feel confident saying that. Edmonton's in a different boat. Edmonton could miss the playoffs. I mean, it's shocking for me to say that because they've kind of been in the top 3 most of the year. But depending on how they finish out without Draisaitl, they had a big win over San Jose last night. San Jose wins that game.
Sure.
That's an enormous swing. That was a big, big win for Edmonton. In Edmonton. Anyway, they're also on the wrong side, I just mentioned, of the games played metric. They've played 69 games, Edmonton. Teams around them, played fewer than that. Yeah. So we'll see how it plays out.
That's fair.
But you didn't totally laugh in my face when I made that argument for McDavid.
No, I mean, look, I think anybody, I thought you were just going to say give it to a Canadian because they've had a rough year. So no, we don't want to go that route. But that was, look, it's hard to dispute Connor McDavid, so we're not going to rain on that.
His team has needed him this year.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's my point.
Yeah. What would you agree that there's not enough conversation about Kucherov nationally?
Well, we got that mock vote Steve sent us, and I think McDavid and Kucherov were tied.
Yeah.
So
they listen to Power Lunch. I don't blame them for doing that.
To Power Lunch.
But I look, Elliot Friedman speaking on this. Yeah. Other national people, this helps.
The Kucherov surge, if we can call it that, has opened some eyeballs. So that has a little bit more sizzle to it than some other years where he's been, honestly, just more of a consistent point producer. He had a slow start this year and then, caught absolute fire. So let's say he wins the Art Ross. We're going to be hearing about, one of 3 players to overcome a point deficit of 22, and this crazy number of whatever it was against 93 points in 45 games. I mean, people are going to see that, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that may move the needle. By people, I'm talking about the writers who have votes for this award.
Let's go to some more questions. I know Thomas from Lutz had something to say. That game was more of a Lightning brand of hockey. Really important to string some wins together now. Yeah.
Yeah, no argument there. And I mentioned yesterday in the show, you have a road trip it's a 4-game road trip. That first game can set the tone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a guarantee of success moving forward, but it just starts everything on a good note. You have that first win in the bank, and you're not we're chasing it now. We lost the first game.
And it's also just some good karma too, feeling good about yourself because
yes.
It's like a baseball player, 300 hitter who goes into a slump. Once you start working your way out of it, you're like, I can do this.
Sure.
I'm back to where I am. And I'm sure the Lightning, they kept saying, we're not worried. We know you have a good team. But until you do it again, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, that feels better. I know we can do this. We just did it. And now let's a little bit of probably weight lifted off their shoulders. Not a ton, but I mean, it's,
well,
there's
a game like that will help them with their swag, which is a word I use a lot.
Look, we thought
they had it going last night.
Seattle struggles scoring. I mean, Vancouver. We can have conversations about them. So,
well, they beat the Panthers again. I mean, the Panthers are.
By
the way, I saw this article linked on the morning skate. I have to go and read this. I had to click on it because I'm like, what?
What is it?
So. Panthers could pull off late playoff push like Maple Leafs in 1949 and 1967. So, this is written by Stan Fischler, who's, one of the all-time iconic hockey reporters. Yeah. But I was like, what? They just lost on the road to Seattle and Vancouver. Hammered in both. They have injuries continuing to play them, although Seth Jones just came back, and they have so much ground to make up. I'm like, really?
Does Stan know something we don't?
I mean, the article was more about the Maple Leaf teams that, in 1949 and 1967.
Hey, partner, we weren't around then. I ain't going to tell you anything about them.
Well, I mean, I think it was more of an historical piece. But it's like, following their 6-2 loss against Seattle, the Panthers have all this ground to make up. Yeah, they have all this ground to make up. What are you talking about, a late playoff push?
But, the other thing, too, is one has nothing to do with the other. Now, I know there's
one has nothing to do
context,
with the other.
But, I mean, who cares what Toronto did late 1940? That has no bearing. Yes. Leagues are different. Players are different. Like, what are we doing?
I mean, look, they're the two-time defending champs. That much is true, and they have pride. But it just is not happening for them this year. And, it's human nature. Like, they have exhaled. I feel confident saying that. They did pick up a couple of wins at home, including a win over Detroit, which helped the Lightning. But they, as we talked about heading into the Olympic break, they have a lot of road games. They're on the same trip the Lightning are on. They're just one step ahead. So they go Seattle, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, just like the Lightning. They are just playing those teams one step ahead of the Lightning, and they're 0-2 to start the trip. They are not going to make the playoffs. But how much of what happened last night between the Panthers and Canucks was about the Panthers just not playing well, and how much of it was the Canucks actually did play well? We'll see. They have the thank you, Steve. If Florida wins out, they can only get to 99 points, and that's winning out. I mean, 99 points would get them in, but that's presuming that they can go, 15-0.
Do we have the breakdown of percentages of teams to make the playoffs now at this point?
You mean the probability?
Yeah, probabilities.
I mean, those are out there. I'm not sure.
I'd love to see some of those numbers for teams like Florida at this point. Yeah, because I'm sure internally the teams, whether they're sharing it with the players or not, are looking at it. I mean, at this point, everything's fair game. You're looking at the standings every day. You have to. Mm-hmm. If you're a team, especially like the Panthers, but if you're the Lightning, you're exposed to so much out there. How could you not know where you are in the standings?
I think Steve found the odds of making the playoffs.
Moneypuck.com.
Yeah, that's way too small for me to read. So
can't do it.
It's like the pinwheel, right? With the
it is what it is, man. Bev says the boys look like they had their swag back last night.
Yeah, they did have their swag back.
I think that's fair to say. Alan says, I don't know what kind of practice happened, but it worked. Cooper should win Jack Adams, hands down, no question. Game, set, match.
Well, they had a practice on Monday, as we talked about on yesterday's show, or maybe Monday's show. The Lightning did come out to the West Coast an extra day before the game. But they had practices earlier since the break ended, and it didn't really result in them playing very well. I think for the last two comments, we'll say the same thing. Ultimately, it's kind of on the players' shoulders to go out and do it. And they did it. They did it last night. And, they didn't forget how to play hockey. They were in a slump. And hopefully the slump is going to be behind them and they can string together some wins. But what we saw last night was a team that was playing with confidence, swag. And when they play like that, you kind of see it's easy to forget because we can be prisoners in the moment, to use your expression. Mm-hmm. But, there's a reason why they went 15-3. There was a reason why they went 19-1-1 going into the Olympic break. I mean, you can't luck your way into that. So they just had to rediscover their form. Part of their form is playing quickly, executing crisply, and playing with pace and playing hungry. Mm-hmm. Those are all elements of what the Lightning want to do when they are rolling.
Dustin says the boys are getting their swag back. Go Bolts. I expect this road trip to be a sweep considering they keep the pressure on. Well, nothing's a guarantee. Not that you
and don't be a prisoner of the moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's take a deep breath.
It's one game, but it's a good start for them to start building up their game even more. Just, if they can maintain what they showed last night, that would be fantastic.
Chris says that was pre-Olympic Bolts, baby. Yeah, they were good.
Mm-hmm.
They were good. Go Blue, I think, is something about the high stick when Hedman got smacked in the face didn't come back to haunt us. I think he's saying, thank God.
Yeah. So I never saw a really good replay of that. It was clear that, so a couple of things happened. The Lightning were killing a penalty. Something happened to Hedman. The puck went from one corner to the other, and the Lightning shot it down the ice, but they blew the whistle. So I'm like, okay, they blew the whistle because there's a penalty coming up, because there was no reason for a whistle unless it was a penalty, and it wasn't like an injury where, it wouldn't have required a whistle. Hedman was down, but I mean, usually they're like, the puck's down the ice, get up, get off the ice. So I think that they were considering a penalty. In fact, maybe they blew the whistle because they thought it was a penalty. It may have been a penalty. I don't know. I mean, usually for them to review a high stick, it needs to be a 4. We've had this conversation previously. If the player is not cut, they cannot go back and review the penalty. And I guess the officials conferred and decided that it was not a penalty. So how did Hedman get clipped or whatever happened to him? Because I didn't see a replay on it. Maybe if he was clipped, it was a teammate stick or his own stick, and one of the officials saw it. But that call would have helped the Lightning, because that was one of their kills that they had in the second period. And if they just let play go, the puck would have been down the ice. Instead, they had a neutral zone face-off on the Lightning side of the red line, which was kind of unfortunate. But once they blew the whistle, that's where the face-off would have been if they decided not to call penalty, which is what happened. I didn't have a lot of issue, though, with the referees last night. I mean, it was kind of a low penalty game. We had the fight between Gord and Ben Myers. Myers didn't like a check Gord laid on, but I thought it was, shoulder to chest. Yeah. There was no additional penalty there. Myers didn't like it, so they fought. Gord won the fight.
Who's the best Lightning fighter? They got some, like Braden Point can fight.
Yeah,
Yanni Gord can fight.
I think Sabrin.
Sabrin's probably
yeah. Sabrin is all offense. I mean, clearly, as we saw, he's just like, I am not interested in like grabbing onto the. I mean, maybe he is.
I'm gonna hit you with my left, and we're gonna go.
I guess. So Carolina acquired Delorier at the deadline. He didn't play against the Lightning, but last night he made his Carolina debut. They played Columbus, so you had a Delorier-Olivier fight.
So that's a good bout
in that game, yeah. And that was that they both threw and landed, but Olivier apparently got cut. But it was one of those where they were both exhibiting like the willingness to throw, but also defend. Like I think that they respected each other, and there was a lot of like grabbing and
right,
and all of that.
Those are guys who know how to fight in some strong.
Yeah, and at the end of it, Delorier like tapped Olivier on the helmet, so like a sign of respect.
That always makes me laugh.
Yeah,
guy, I just beat you up. I'm gonna pat you on the butt.
Yeah,
let's go do it. Wisman says late games are brutal. I am so sleepy. Yes, I get
Tell me about it. We rolled into Vancouver at 1 a.m. Pacific time, so I did make sure I was up for our show today. But I'm
glad we did it live.
Siesta.
Yeah, you're gonna take a little nap. Let's see here. Carl says first goal for Cirelli since December. Hagel getting back on the horse. Points in Gens with points. Cooch on fire like it's NBA Jam. Gordlime throwing punches to the face. Offense motor was humming.
So we had a fan talk about Cirelli hadn't scored since December, and I was like, I didn't realize that. That is not true. Cirelli scored in January. So his last goal before last night was a home game against Utah. So I'm not sure where this started that Cirelli hadn't scored since December.
Yeah.
I do think Cirelli had not gotten really going offensively, though, since returning from injury, even though he chipped in some assists. I think he had a 4-game assist streak going into the Carolina game, if I'm remembering right, which was maybe a high this year, but he was very noticeable last night. He was like pre-injury Cirelli.
He looked good. It's
Yeah.
a big part of what they want to do. Russo. Americans and Canadians think Russians are the boogeyman. So much bias against Kucherov. He's been the best player in the world for 3 years now.
I don't know that it's a national thing. I think there are a couple things at play. There may be a bias against Kucherov, not against Russian players, but Kucherov doesn't talk to the media very much. He doesn't. Mm-hmm. So the media votes on the Hart Trophy. So there may be a line there. And Eric has talked about this. Like the other players that have basically won the Hart Trophy, and I'm going to include McKinnon, even though McKinnon was like, McKinnon snub, McKinnon never win. Like the year that McKinnon won, you can make an argument that Kucherov was more deserving. There may have been other years where McKinnon was deserving and didn't win. But McKinnon has won the award recently. And I think McKinnon and McDavid, if you're watching them on TV, they jump off the screen at you. Kucherov's brilliance is more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think you can't just watch a highlight. I mean, you can, but, you have to be able to understand that what Kucherov does better than anybody else is a little more muted, right? It's
post-game news conference.
It's like well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, the wizard, he's like a wizard, right? Like he kind of like crafts his potion and sets it off, like McKinnon's like Wreck-It Ralph, right? He's like bomb, like
sure.
He's very noticeable. I mean, I don't know if that's a compliment to McKinnon. I mean it as a compliment. Like, McKinnon like barrels through everyone and like dominates with his speed and physicality and just skill. And McDavid is like the road runner, right? I mean, he's like, whoop.
Yeah.
Kucherov has, just a different way about him. And, if you're basing it on like who's jumping off the screen at me or when I go to a game, who's like so noticeable that I can't take my eyes off of him, you have to pay attention to what Kucherov is doing, I think.
That's a fair point. I also think the media thing is a thing. He just doesn't talk enough for a lot of people to just know his personality, to know him. I mean, that's just where we are. G4 says Hedman is still struggling and fighting it a bit. That remains a concern going forward until we see some kind of improvement. Happy with the results last night, however. Let's go Bolts.
Yeah, I thought Hedman played better. I mean, he had a bad game against Carolina. He didn't have a bad game last night. He and Chernak had the miscue on the McCann goal, but again, I'm not sure. That seemed like a confusion about coverage thing. It wasn't maybe one guy, but I mean, I didn't notice that Victor had a ton of turnovers or, he was up in the play like a lot of the defensemen. I thought he had a good game last night.
Are you surprised McDonough Chernak's not back together? I mean, it's kind of gone back and forth, but
it may be they were looking for a spot for Hedman.
Could be.
Yeah, McDonough was playing the right side a lot last night too. They had Destu on the left. So next time I talk to McDonough, I'm going to ask him, like, when was the last time you played the right side regularly? I noticed in the offensive zone he was like having to hold in pucks on his backhand and was doing it, but it is a little different for a guy who's, as long as he's been with the Lightning, he's played the left side.
Have we ever seen Hedman and McDonough together?
Well, on the odd shift. And maybe that's a situation when McDonough has been on the right side, possibly.
Interesting. Let's see. Let's go to this goes to a little bit of the question I had. D-pair. G4 says, D-pairs were mixed up last night. Chernak and McDonough split up as well. Somewhat surprisingly that the pair is usually a constant no matter the struggle. More so in
they have not
years.
Played together, but they haven't played together for several games now.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah. Greg says, I think Cooch could score 150 points and they'd still pass up on him for the Hart. Maybe. Maybe not. Adam says, wow, there's the team that's been missing since the break. We found them. What do you think was our key to success last night, other than 2026 Hart winner Nikita Kucherov?
Well, hunger and urgency were there, and execution was very, very high.
Zebra says, a nice right game. Hope the Bolts can take at least 3 of 4 on this road trip. We have mostly a home for the rest of the year at home. Got to take back first place. Good calls last night from Mish.
Yeah, the Lightning only have 7 road games left, 2 4-game trips, and they're 1 game into this trip. So when they finish this trip, they have, 9 of the final 13 at home. 7-game homestand.
That's a lot.
Good opponents, though, and I mean, that fan that wrote in about strength of schedule, which take that for what it's worth. It may be worth a lot. It may not be worth that much. As we've said, teams out of the playoffs can sting teams in contention in some of these late season games that have no meaning for the team that's out of it, but they play loose. Having said that, the Lightning do have a lot of teams on their schedule that are currently in a playoff spot after this trip. Vancouver's not, Calgary's not. But after this trip, they have a lot of teams that are currently in a playoff position or close to a playoff position, like Ottawa. But the other part of it is they have a lot of divisional games.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you need to win all of those, but you can't lose all of them either. Like, you need to do reasonably well, I think, in some of those head-to-heads. And if you do, and you have a point lead on the team that you are playing, even if it's a split, you're not letting them gain ground. The Lightning have 2 games left against a lot of these Atlantic teams. Boston, Montreal, Ottawa. That's 6 right there. And they have single games left against Detroit and Buffalo. So what is that, 8 that I just rattled off?
Yep.
And those are all teams that are in the mix here.
We get to our favorite drink, Reif Rum. Smooth,
Yes.
versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reif Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reif Rum by name. Go Bullets. Enjoy it responsibly. We should say we are going to be live tomorrow, and then I think we're taping Friday. So we just want to
it'll be an early tape for me. So the Lightning play Vancouver tomorrow, and they are spending the night in Vancouver. It is not an easy trip from Vancouver to Edmonton. I'm glad the Lightning do not have that as a back-to-back, because it's a long way from the rink to the airport in both cities, and you're losing an hour. The Lightning have had back-to-backs where it's been at Vancouver, at Edmonton. That might be the hardest back-to-back in the NHL. Unless there's some weird one where it's like...
Because the distance and the time change, too?
Well, it's a regular back-to-back for some teams, because when you go to Western Canada, you're playing all of these teams. And, the distance of the flight is not as long as some others. Like I was talking with Everett Fitzhugh last night. We were talking about this back-to-back, the Vancouver. He's like, that is a brutal back-to-back. He's like, we had one at Minnesota, at Dallas. He's like, that's a tough one, because that's just a long distance. Mm-hmm. But some of it is, how long does it take to actually get to the airport? Tampa is a good location for visiting teams coming in that regard, because the airport is fairly close to where you need to go, whether you're leaving the rink. I mean, how long does it take to get from Benchmark International Arena to the airport? TIA? I mean, 15, 20 minutes maybe, once you're out of the traffic. Like Denver, it's an hour. Like, it is an hour. When you leave Colorado's rink, you are on the road for an hour to get to the airport.
Take a nap.
I mean, it's a long way. Washington's the same way, because you can't fly out of Reagan. You're going to Dulles. It's, I mean, maybe in the middle of the night, it's not an hour. It is a long way. So I don't know the geography of Vancouver and Edmonton well enough, but I've been on these trips long enough to know, like, we just bust in from the airport last night when we got to Vancouver. It is a long way to get to either your hotel or the rink from Vancouver. The same is true in Edmonton. So here's the problem that arises from, and it has to be in this order, the Vancouver-Edmonton back-to-back, in that order. Long distance from the rink to the airport to the hotel in both cities. You're losing an hour, and often, not always, but often when you're leaving Vancouver, if the weather is cold, you're going to de-ice, which adds time. Now, right now the weather is pretty moderate in Vancouver, and there's rain, and the Lightning don't have a back-to-back. That's my point. So instead of doing that trip after the game tomorrow, the Lightning are spending the night in Vancouver and then just going to Edmonton on Friday, which I think is an off day. But that's way different than having to do it in the middle of the night and then come back and play the next night. So anyway, that's some inside baseball, I guess, for the fans if they're interested. The Edmonton-Calgary back-to-back is different, but it's still a long way from the rink in Edmonton to the airport, and the Lightning, as we've talked about, have that 22-hour gap between the games. So that will be a tough back-to-back, but I don't think it's as tough as the Vancouver-Edmonton back-to-back usually is. Although, I mean, the Edmonton game is starting at 8 Mountain Time, so it's like it's like a Vancouver start time.
Right.
So we'll see. We've kind of cautioned everyone about that Calgary game, which it is going to be a tough back-to-back for the Lightning. But anyway, Friday is a pre-tape because you guys have some stuff going on, which is fine with me, and we will not be flying in the middle of the night. So I will have a regular bedtime.
We'll have our coffee ready.
We'll have the coffee ready, yes.
Kyle says, think the players needed that kind of game as much as the fans. Hopefully they keep it rolling. Yeah,
agreed.
I think we're all let's see. Josh says, I found it funny that the second period was the worst period for the Bolts last night when it has usually been their best period for the majority of the season. Are the numbers backing that up?
Well, they've been a good team in all 3 periods. There was a while where they were among the best teams in the first period. That took a hit when we came out of the Olympic break, and they kept giving up 3 and 4 goals in the first period. But I'm not sure it had anything to do with the second period. Can be a problem period if you get stuck on the long change, which we talked about in that Detroit game where McDonough and Radish had the monster shift. They couldn't get off the ice. I think last night's problem had less to do with the second period and just to do with what happened in the game. It wasn't due to the long change or anything like that. It was just, the Lightning made a couple of key mistakes that Seattle turned into goals and turned a 3-0 game into a 3-2 game. That could have happened, though, in any of the 3 periods. It just happened to occur in the second period.
Let's see here. Somebody asked about the missed call. High stick to the face of Hedman. Kyle says, I think Chernak made the right decision on the second goal, how to protect the back door, counting on Hedman and Vasi.
Well, I mean, there is an element of let the goalie take the shooter, but I'm sorry. I do not think it is in the game plan to let the guy walk right to the front of the net. It's not. So that maybe the mistake was made earlier in the sequence, and if it is on Hedman, he needed to not get basically positioned between Eberle and McCann got underneath him and had a lane to the net. But maybe if I have a chance to pull a coach aside, I'll be like, how would you have liked to have seen that play defended? Also, it's a little weird because the penalty's expiring. You got a third defenseman coming out of the box. I think everyone was just like, what's going on here, right? But it was a nice finish from McCann. I mean, it was, Mike Benton telling us he's turned into a catch and shoot, type of player. That wasn't really catch and shoot, but he's got good hands, and he chipped that in. Of the guys you probably don't want to see walking out of the corner on his off wing, so in other words, his stick blade was in the middle of the ice, he's probably one of them on Seattle.
Yeah, that's fair.
Former 40-goal scorer. Yeah,
he can light it up. Thaw 345 says Mish must have some insane travel miles.
Yeah, I don't get credit for them. That's fine with me.
That's all right.
I mean, we fly in style, so I don't mind not getting the travel miles.
Yeah, the traveling at that level is pretty nice. So
yes,
that's what it is.
But it doesn't accelerate. I mean, I guess in some ways it can be accelerated in that sometimes commercial flights have delays that charters don't. But you're still looking at, loading the plane, right? Cleared for takeoff. The distance is the distance. We're not in Star Trek land where, just beam me to the hotel room, right? I'm going to get there in, nothing flat. It takes time to get from point A to point B, even if you're traveling in style.
Traveling in style, Mish. Who would have thought? That's what we do. All right, so we're back at it again tomorrow live, and you and I will be breaking it down again.
The 3 Petterssons on Vancouver.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Elias Pettersson, Elias Pettersson, and Marcus Pettersson.
That'll be fun.
None of which are related.
That's
of whom
crazy,
are
isn't
related.
It? That is nuts. It is what it is, though.
Yeah. Well, that was like the 2 Sebastian Ahos. I think the defenseman Sebastian Aho is not in the NHL anymore.
I think
Can you
he's
imagine
actually
if
playing
they played
in
on the
Pittsburgh.
same team?
Yeah, he's the defenseman in the minor leagues, I think, at this point.
He's in the minors. Okay.
Yeah.
What's weird is that the Carolina Sebastian Aho is Finnish, and the now Pittsburgh
is he Swedish?
Sebastian Aho is Swedish. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, they are neighboring
it's
countries,
crazy.
but
It's crazy, isn't it? Well, hey.
Will the real Sebastian Aho stand up?
That is funny.
Yes.
Oh, man. All right, partner. We'll be back at it again tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We appreciate you guys. Thanks to Steve Versnick. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.